the set in Denver. And we're here tonight to talk about all of our lessons learned, how we did as a team, how we each did individually, and kind of just setting the stage for how you evaluate yourself, how you evaluate your testing, your choices, and a little bit of the luck as well after a big event. Last week, if you missed it, it's on the channel. We spoke about how we get ready for an event. We broke down what leaders you should be playing. That's a lot of the stuff that we talk about because we only compete, in these big events, maybe 5-6 times a year. As we're going through this stuff, we're going to try to learn a little bit so you could take a couple steps that we had to, so you could just learn through us. All right, I'm Jordan from the Colorado Cantina Crew, and I got Sharkey and Kyle here. Kyle's fresh off top 8 and other points on the board for the set. And Sharkey, you were a bubble boy again getting into the weekend. But what were your thoughts overall as we had the first Denver event of the set?
Yeah, I think it was a good set. It was a good tournament. We had a lot of fun. We had a good showing, that sort of thing. We're going to get into the meta here a little bit, but it was kind of what we thought it was going to be. Maybe a little less control than we were expecting, but overall, kind of some of the consistency we saw out of a few decks the previous week definitely showed up in our local meta. And so, that felt good, being prepared into what was coming. How'd you think, Sharkey?
I would take issue with the less control than we expected, because there was a lot less control than I expected. Mostly not due to the data from other places, but usually Colorado tends to be a pretty heavy control kind of area, and that did not show up this weekend.
So that's one of the things that we'll have to talk about, right? Is that as we tilt our practice, as we tilt what our deck building looks like, we try to predict what the meta is going to be like. Do you make the right call? Do you make the wrong call? Last week we did a little tier list talking about what the meta is probably going to look like, and there was 2 leaders that we were talking about really being great positions. One was Quinlan, and Boba we had, I think if I remember correctly, at the top of tier A, and we said that if he had another multi-win PQ weekend, that he's rocket shipping right up to S tier. And I think that right now, when you have these types of changes from week to week, there's big events. Each week we have more and more tournaments, and this week there was 18, the biggest week yet so far. We see a lot of changes based on that. So yeah, I was called out by the lack of the big data vault decks, the Kylos, the Kiras, even some harder control than that. But how do you learn from that? How do you adjust? Do you try to not over adjust towards things that you're predicting, or do you just try to play your own game?
Yeah, I think so far, as we've just kind of looked week over week, it seems like the meta has been people trying to get ahead of the meta. And the way I mean by that is, that very first weekend we saw, and this was a small sample size, but it started with control, right? And so then going into the next week, you kind of saw the rise of the anti-control, right? Some of these decks that could eat up the control like the aggro decks, right? We talked about a rise in Sabine, some of this aggro, and then going into week 3, I felt like I started to see a rise of the cards of the decks that kind of eat that deck, and specifically like the Boba Data Vault, right? Boba Data Vault can be a real challenge for aggro decks because you're just going to race with more HP, right? So the question is, does that mean we try to get ahead of it again next week? It feels kind of like that's where it's going, but this is all going to settle eventually, right? I think people are kind of playing the decks they want to play. I'll say from my experience, I was trying to decide between Quinlan and Han Blue, and I ended up picking Han Blue. And the reason I picked that was because I'm aware that there's several people in our local area that play Boba Data Vault. And I was aware of the Boba Data Vault performance the previous week. So I thought I'd see a lot of Boba Data Vault. And Han Blue, in my experience, crushes Boba Data Vault, right? So I thought I'm going to beat up that deck. And I was rewarded immediately because my first 2 matches were Boba Data Vault, and I went 2-0, 2-0 to start the tournament, right? So, I was happy with my choice. Obviously, I made it to the top 8. But, to answer your question a little more specifically, though, do I continue to try to get ahead of that meta? Do I think we're going to take that next step and kind of keep going in that circular motion? Or do I kind of think we're going to settle in a local meta situation that I try to sit in? And so I guess I have 2 weeks to figure it out, because that's when our next PQ is.
So what is the next step, Sharkey? What is the next logical conclusion from where we are now?
I think the next logical conclusion is actually to go back, look at your matchups, figure out what didn't work for you and why. And then once you look at what it is, you try to start evaluating whether you got unlucky, whether your deck wasn't ready, whether you need more reps, whether you can change. What is the next step to prepare for the same situation, right? Did you do something wrong? Did it get lucky? Did you not prepare enough and your deck already functions well? You just played it wrong? Like there's all kinds of like branching different things that evaluating the root cause becomes kind of difficult, but it's one of those you kind of have to explore and put some thought into, like what actually happened there. And if you can adjust your deck, like minor adjustments to it, and it still runs fine, and you can still not lose too many points into too many other matchups, then great. If it's something that you evaluate that it's like a real problem for the deck you're playing, you now have to reevaluate whether you're going to play the same deck, whether you can actually adjust it without losing points into the other things that are probably still floating around. There's all kinds of analysis things that you need to start doing, and I think you need to probably do it, I would say, while it's relatively fresh in your mind as to what happened. Like, was it a bad resourcing decision? Was it a thing? And you're not going to remember that 3 weeks down the line. So I would start thinking about what went wrong early, and then test out a few things to figure out how to solve some of the problems and see where you go from there.
Yeah, so a couple things I want to say. That wasn't what I was looking for at all, right? I was thinking about like what's the next step in the meta, but I'm really glad you mentioned those things, because as you talk about it, that's super real. And also it's an exercise that requires you to be extremely honest with yourself, right? Because if you're not, then don't do the exercise, right? Because there's nothing to learn. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy. So let's earmark that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the pod tonight. But what I was thinking about, Kyle, was like, if we're thinking right now that the two top decks in the past couple of weeks have been Quinlan and Boba Data Vault, with different spikes here and there. Obviously at RPQ, our teammate Jeremiah won on Han Green. There hasn't been many Han Green victories this set so far, but what's the next like stage of the meta if you're trying to get ahead of it?
Yeah, I mean, right now, if we're saying those are the two top decks, I guess I'm thinking, what can I attack those two decks specifically with? You know, it's interesting because those two decks are very different, right? You know, I think, you know, if you're trying to attack Boba Data Vault, any of the Han decks, right? Any deck with healing, Anakin, any of these decks where you're kind of on the ground, you're able to interact with space and also put healing or restore in there, I think you're very well positioned, right? Grogu is a monster against that deck. The problem I ran into in the top 8 is Han not so good against Quinlan, right? And so I can attack the Boba Data Vaults, but the other top dog, as you mentioned, is Quinlan, and that's who knocked me out of the top 8, right? So, you know, is there a good deck that's well positioned into both of those? I don't know what it is, if there is, right? I probably need to really dig into the data. I mean, obviously we can look at the matchup data. We can figure out with those two decks what has a green against both of them, and then determine if I think that's a deck that I'm good at playing and is well positioned into the meta in general. So, you know, that's definitely something, to your point, I'm going to be looking into.
Yeah. So I guess like that's like the first step in the conversation. Are those the two top decks? Sharkey?
Yeah, I think the data pretty clearly has laid that out as the two top decks through the first 3 weeks of the planetary qualifier season. I don't know if there's any way to dispute that. Look at them. Was it between the two of them 5 and 3 wins, or
this
5
week,
and 4 wins or something?
And then last week they both had 2, Kyle.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Exactly. So they had the top wins last week. They had the top wins this week. I can't argue with you. The data says that those are the top leaders from a win percentage. I think if you even spread it out into top 8 representation, I don't think that changes, right?
Nope, it stays constant.
Yeah, stays the same, right? So not only are they getting the wins, but they're the most represented in the top 8 so far. So the question is, do you just play it yourself, or do you try to attack those two decks, right? So, you know, I think from my perspective, you know, if I was going to play one of those, I'm more comfortable with Quinlan, so I would look in that direction. Although I think my gut says first, try to attack those decks, right? You know, can I stay on Han and keep my dominating position over Boba, but find ways to get points into Quinlan? I'll probably start there, see if I can figure that out before I jump ship.
Sure. Sharky?
I would agree with that. I'm always on the attack it side, and neither of these decks. I like these decks, but I'm not as practiced with these decks as I am with pretty close to every other option I have. So like these are probably the fringe options for me if I was to go to a PQ tomorrow, only because of how much time I've been able to put into playing them. But they are clearly the top decks, and I don't know that there's a single deck right now that can reliably beat both of these two. So you're going to have to make a concession somewhere, and it's a matter of how far you're willing to concede points. I wouldn't say concede matches, but see if you can still pull something out while being weaker to one of the two of them.
Yeah. So as we finish up this sort of little chat about what the top deck is and what we're planning for in the future, as we look at our own decks individually, how off were we when we in our particular prep. Like, so for my instance, I was playing Talzin, and I ended up going 4-3. I started off pretty well, and I lost to a Luke Datavault pilot. I lost to a Quinlan, which I believe is the toughest matchup for Talzin, and then I lost to an odd Han Tarkin Talon. So like, going into the weekend, I knew those are matchups that I was going to struggle in. I added tech in my sideboard, and I could pull it up, but the tech that I played was pretty effective. I had, the Graceful Purgle in there to stop some of the space aggro, but the thing that really got me out was like these massively built pilots and then not having answers for them. So like a pilot Falcon with a Han and a Han leader on it, right? Like a Luke onto a Kitsy Aether Sprite. Like those things were tough for me to deal with. And I think looking at my concepts, I was over prepared for control. I was setting up for, this is a terrible matchup for Talzin after my experience in Albuquerque, and I was like, I need to be ready for what that looks like. And I felt very confident in being able to use the discard package and grind games out and those things. But I think through that lens, I lost some points in the space area, which turned out to be an area that I needed to focus on more than control, right? And then the question, if I framed that when I was thinking about it, then maybe Talzin wouldn't have been the choice that I landed on, right? Because I think I'm more confident in the tools that I could add to limit what control can do with Talzin than I am with a deck that barely plays any space units, right? So that was one thing for me that I know I was off on in my prep last week.
Yeah, I had a similar feeling in that I think I made the absolute worst possible meta call I think I've ever made. And I mean that in the deck actually performed very well, all things considered, for that. I thought my deck ran great. I ran into a bit of an after lunch crash. I think that's more on a me than the deck problem. Mm-hmm. But I was this is the new version, but I was very skewed towards prepared for control. And the one control matchup I had, I 2-0'd it was a good player, and I liked playing with him, but like I was absolutely ready for that kind of a matchup more often than I saw it. Mm-hmm. The ones that got me that I was not quite as prepared for are, as you mentioned earlier, the pilot decks. And I think I've made a few adjustments to the deck since then to be more prepared. And frankly, I think I have a pretty good run with it with the deck now. But I definitely didn't have a lot of those tools in the deck, especially main deck. A lot of it was on the sideboard, and I was prepared for it if I had to be. But like I was way more tuned towards longer control-y games. And the games that I ended up losing are games that I was maybe 2 actions on the high end from stabilizing too. So when you have that kind of when you're that far off on the initial call, you're going to lose game 1 sometimes, and then game 2 you can get it, but you got to be a lot more ready for it, I think. And I made the wrong call there for the control side.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the lunch crash, and anything additional that you learned from that, that sort of thing. It is interesting. I find that is not uncommon amongst players. It's definitely something I focus on, trying to get some food, go outside, breathe a little, try to reset myself, make sure I'm not coming back tired, that sort of thing. Any additional info there?
Well, yes, I have a little bit extra to think about, partially because I'm diabetic. The other part of that is that I've noticed if I actually eat a real meal during the day, I don't know, my brain just starts being slow and mucky, and it just feels weird. And I don't know how much of that is me now mentally thinking that versus how much it's actually there. So I think what I would do is I found something that works at Galactics and a few other tournaments, is I have much smaller snack throughout the day instead of having a lunch, defined as a meal. And I made the mistake of not doing that this time for sure. And I'm kind of kicking myself over, because the last time I did this, I had the same kind of crash and the same kind of like started off 4-0, ended up losing the rest of my games. Right. So like, it's not the first time it's happened. It's now a pattern, and I'm starting to, that's where I'm starting my analysis this week, actually.
Well, there's definitely obviously the medical stuff that, Kyle and I are schmucks. We can't comment on that sort of thing at all. But that, you heard the beeping earlier in the episode. Was that your glucose meter? Is that what it's called? Yeah. So I think that's a real thing. And for me, I always like to eat a little bit lighter. We actually all, which I think in hindsight was probably pretty stupid, we all went to a Mexican restaurant on our lunch hour, and we went, Kyle, another one of our teammates, Alex, and Jillian were there a little earlier, so I don't know how like hefty you guys ate, but I just had a little bit. Yeah, that's what I did too, and I felt okay with that. But I like, I bring protein bars. For me, it's all about water. Like for me,
Yeah.
I carry so much with me, and people make fun of me for it because I just hate being thirsty, and then it makes me nervous. I guess I get in my own head about it. But I think making sure that you're like not freaking out going into an event takes it a long way. That would be my biggest thing, is that like just remember you're there to have fun, and you're there to spend time with your friends, your teammates, or you're there to rob the joy of people who you don't know. Right. So like you have to try to find a way to like settle yourself down. And especially after bad situations, like Kyle, we'll talk about your matchups a little bit, but like we've all like, you know, debriefed with a teammate or a friend after a match. We're like, oh man, you know, and like that's okay for like a bit. Right. And then you have to be like, okay, that happened and we're done. But yeah, so Kyle, in your prep in the deck, what would you say is your mistake for the week?
Yeah, so you know, I ended up settling on Han Blue. You know, and a lot of that was just a knowledge or an awareness that there was going to be a good amount of Boba Data Vault. And again, I feel really good into Boba Data Vault with this deck. This is, you know, I've modified it a little bit since Worlds, right, with some lessons learned. I ended up bringing in the Mystic Reflections. And I thought those would be good into the mirror, taking out any of these kind of 2/2 shielded units, that sort of thing. It's really good into the space stuff. I will say it was average at best. I wasn't like super impressed with its performance yesterday, but I'm going to keep it because there were situations where had I had it in my hand at the right time, it could have been very good. You know, a couple of cards in the past that I felt underperformed that lots of other Han Blue players are like very high on are Ogdo and Yaddle. Those two cards were awesome yesterday. Just awesome. Ogdo Bogdo, I played a Ray Data Vault. Ogdo Bogdo just won a game by himself. Just ate everything the guy played for like the first 4. He just could not have anything on ground thanks to Ogdo Bogdo. So anyway, kind of all stars there. Also the daughter, very good. I played a lot of space aggro. We call it, space BS pilot decks. I played a wedge blue that just ran me over game 1. I was like, oh no.
That one.
Right. And that was the matchup I needed to win to get in the top 8 too. And so, after he crushed me game 1, I got a little worried, but I think that's the power of force throw. And a lot of people, I'm not the only person to say this, but like being able to force throw myself to like when they pile it up, because I think he went turn 1 ship, turn 2 Chewie, maybe every game. And the only way to stop it was like force throw myself, Luke, Crate Dragon, whatever, and then kill it. And then I had to deal with Wedge both times because it was like 2 big ship threats, right? I had to deal with the Chewie ship and then the Wedge piloted ship, which by then I had Rivals Fall, I think, both the times. So it's a pretty scary matchup. But with Han, you can heal a lot on ground if you can just survive those early piloted ships. The interesting part was the sideboard, though. So I made a couple changes, and I think I'm going to make a couple more. The extra daughter in there, great. The spark actually worked. Like the intent of the spark was I was worried about Iden, and I played Iden. My only loss in Swiss was to Iden. And I probably got a little extra salty about it. So sorry, Space Bear. That deck makes me. I just see red when I see Iden on the board. I don't know what the deal is, but anyway, the idea was to I was able to ramp with him with what's his butt there, Cham, and then I was trying to spark the Super Laser Blast. And I did it. I succeeded. I ramped with him. Going into 8, I sparked the Super Laser Blast. I was like, I got him. We did this. And then he drew another Super Laser Blast. It is what it is. So I don't know. I might try that again. The Avenger was kind of fun, but not effective. That's probably going to come out. I actually thought maybe that should be Relentless. Maybe if I still have a bad matchup into these Idens and these things, the idea is like I could throw it with Force Throw. Maybe I could use it during the matchup. It activates Anakin. I might try Relentless next, I think. Bombing Run was unnecessary.
12 though, bro, doesn't it?
What? No, 8, 9, 10, 10. 12. Oh, yeah, you're right. 12. Yeah, that might be tough because it's not blue.
You're right, the green.
Yeah, you're right. That's probably a little crazy. The other one I'd mentioned is Bombing Run. Didn't use it once. Brought it in a couple of times, and even when I didn't use it.
Well, let's stop there for a second, right? Yeah. Because I think when you're playing against these pilot decks that are running pilots that add more than 1 HP that aren't doing the Vader Swarm, it becomes significantly less valuable. Right. Agreed. And I wonder if just going back to standard upgrade hate is what the move is there, because I can't even tell you how many times there were situations, even in games I won. Unfortunately, I played one of our teammates, Kyle Borgal, on in round 1. He's Grand Lotus, and he was on Poe ECL, and there was many times where like I could bomb and run and not kill a thing, but leave them all with 1 HP, which then I could add, a 1,000 ping or whatever. But
that's 2 actions. Still,
yeah, and they could put up, there's stuff that could happen in between now and then that I'm not comfortable with, right? So I wonder if that's part of it. It has kind of been a standard sideboard card for anything red for the past 2 months. I wonder if that will change, Sharkey.
I have been pretty much against it for a while, partially because of the chunkier space aggro that we're seeing, the Bobas, the Poe. Poe's been more of the ECL version that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So the Data Vault coming out was pretty cool to see. But most of those don't run enough things to be gotten by bombing run to make it worth it to me. And so I actually consciously chose not to run it. But I was also risking. it is very good in Vader.
Oh, for sure.
Well, is it? The Vaders have kind of figured it out. So, my wife,
true,
the Nerd Slayer, was on Vader, right? And this is something we talked a lot about. Having the Scimitar's main deck she was playing.
Oh yeah.
Playing the shielded 3/2, playing just a lot of units that don't get hit by bombing run, and also playing in a manner that bombing run's coming. Set yourself up such that you don't get destroyed by it. And I think she played well into that. She had her best performance ever, right, in a major tournament. She went 4-3, was happy with that, which was awesome. But she never got destroyed by bombing run, like we talked about it. I don't think it was ever a blowout, because she knew it was coming, knew how to play around it. So it just seems less effective.
So with that in mind, it might be good to take out if the best use case scenario is that they're all ready for it. No,
maybe it's Grenade Strike and it's got multi-purpose use.
Being ready for it is different than having the exact stuff. So basically right now in Vader decks, there are the Shuttle ST that's shielded, the Scimitar, and then the 7th Defender or
and
Lurking Tie.
And Lurking Tie. Well, you just named 3, 6, 9, 12 ships. Yeah. That's most of their ships.
They're running, isn't it 30?
All their one drops will probably die.
Exactly. That's the thing, right? I wonder if the question is more about can you handle these larger ships individually and the masses by itself. But the other question is when you're building a sideboard, how many cards do you want to devote to one specific deck? I feel like it's kind of hard. I think Django reached levels of that, where you had to devote cards and multiple cards in main and side for that. I think at times Sabine was like that, Boba Green and set 1, etc., etc. But I don't think that we have a deck currently that warrants having.
I would agree that there's not one
sideboard.
now.
Yeah.
But I do think that for Galactics, for example, everyone was doing that for Han too. I don't know that it's a good idea to continue doing that for Han too. He's well represented, but I don't know how much. It's the same question. And maybe now it becomes Quinlan and Boba, but what are those cards that you're bringing in for it is the real question. Which one are you going to put in your sideboard to help with that matchup?
There's no silver bullet card. I think depending on what deck you're playing, you're going to have to sideboard in different answers, right? Or prepare in different ways.
I think right now, and real quick, we'll all just go around and say what is one that you would pretty much always are going to have. And I think for me, it's going to be some sort of upgrade hate. This week I didn't have any. I think whether it's Bamboozle, Fang Fighter, System Shock, Confiscate, Kit's Ether Sprite, I think it just right now I feel like it's warranted.
I would agree. I've got upgrade hate in the main already for mine, but I added in the daughter to my kit deck as well, and it turns out that all of the testing against Boba has been significantly better with him before. Is it a silver bullet? Not so much, but it's very good in that matchup.
So I guess would you say it's similar to why you would include Sindari into being that category of card, aggro, protection / healing, Yoda's lightsaber, for instance, and then some other builds? I guess that makes sense. Yeah,
very much just like that.
How?
Yeah, it's interesting because that I've never been on the upgrade hate train. I'll run it a little, and I run it a lot of the time just as during open deck list, I just want you to know it's there, and I don't even maybe I shouldn't say it, but I don't even bring it in sometimes, right? I just want you to know it's there and be scared of it, right? But I am not an upgrade hate fan. I'd rather present challenges than try to answer those challenges sometimes. For me in the sideboard, there's other silver bullets out there. If Kylo continues to be a thing, the Parliamentarian, as much as we talk to some of our Bothan friends, and I feel like they'll talk it off like it's not that big of a deal, and I'm like, I don't know, it's worked very well for me. But in the sideboard, things I do like are like anti-aggro things. Like if you're not going to run cheer at main, you're in blue, at least having the sideboard, going to the daughter, like you said there. I beef up with extra daughter in the sideboard. I like having answers that just shut down really aggressive strategies if I'm in a deck that can support it.
Okay, so you're just stealing Sharkies. That's cool.
I said one card. It's just because I was like 5 cards.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, going back to the upgrade hate stuff, I mean, I wasn't running in Towson. Like typically my rule is that like if I'm running a deck that has like a lot of actual removal, that's what I consider my upgrade hate to be. But I think logically, like we're gonna see a lot of space decks moving forward. I think it just makes sense right now, especially these hardier ones, right? Like I don't see. I think Poe had a kind of breakout week this week. I think we saw Kaz not get as much play this week because people realized that he wasn't fast enough or hardy enough to deal with the Boba data vaults of the world, which is definitely true, right? Like if they start, and they're ramping as well. So if they ramp into Invisible Hand, like you're like, okay, I'll play a corporate defense shell. Doesn't really do much, right? So I think that we're going to continue to see that, plus the swarm decks. And then, Sabine's always a challenge too. Like she's running different types of lightsabers, whether it's like the swoop racer variant. I played a Sabine yesterday in the final round and he was on that list. In turn 1, he had initiative. He played Gunji and pinged after I played my stuff, and I was like, oh, that's weird. I figured he would just claim here, and then he dropped 3 porgs from his hand.
I love that.
Yeah, like all of a sudden I was like, oh my god, thank God I could actually deal with this. It took a couple turns. He got 4 units out, and then he dark sabered and out. It would have been better for the meme to put it on one of the porgs, but alas. I just think, and then in that deck also you get Luke and Chewie, right? So a lot of stuff going on in the space quadrant and the upgrade quadrant. And Towson, dude. I mean, Towson's a good deck. I think right now, I think I'm gonna cool on her for a couple weeks. But like if she gets a meta that's well positioned for her, like if the Fallen Saber on anything is brutal.
Yep, agreed. I mean, especially one that's shielded.
Yeah.
And Towson's really fallen down though. She's in like the Cad Bane territory of like still around, still can sneak something, but like not like at the top there, right? And it just feels like she's kind of fallen down. We'll see if she can wake back up. But I mean, outside of Quinlan and Boba, it's still the decks you would expect, right? Still a lot of Han, still a lot of Vader pilot, Kylo floating around, Sabine to your point. So, there were some interesting ones that poked in there, but I think we're starting to settle on what the meta's going to look like.
Well, I mean, this week we saw Boba be the most played deck. Last week that was Quinlan, I believe, right?
No, Quinlan was the biggest overperformer, but I think the most
last
played
week was Towson.
It was Towson, that was what we talked about. She was super played, but super underperformed, and her play rate fell down to a line.
Another amazing shout out to Swoo Base. Like, look at this. This is amazing, right? Awesome. You just click in here and you can see all of it.
So one thing that's interesting to me is that the last time Quinlan was starting to get this much of the meta share and be the targeted deck, it absolutely dropped off the map not long after it. I'm wondering if there's something different this time or if it's bound for the same kind of cliff that it had last time.
Yeah, the question will be figuring out like what beats it, right? Sabine can get it. The problem is Sabine has a really rough matchup into like Han and stuff, right? So like you're going to have to line it up right. So what's a good deck that's kind of good into a field and then also good into Quinlan, right? I'm looking at the matchup data now and like Sabine seems to be well into it. Kylo does a good job into it. Kira still does a good job into it. And there was a Kira that got a PQ this weekend, right? The problem with Kira is that it struggles into some of the other matchups too. And all of this is, I love it. It's a healthy meta, right? As I try to sit here and pick one deck, I'm like, but it falls down there, right? To your point just a minute ago, this isn't the Django meta, right? There's not just an obvious answer, right? It's like, I need to pick the one that I think is good into most, and that maybe I can get points into the others either through my sideboard or through strategy, reps, that sort of thing. So, I think it's great. I hope it stays, kind of balanced like this.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it.
So let's get to a couple predictions real quick. And I'll start. Why can't Anakin take down Quinlan?
I think Anakin can. I think he has a positive matchup into Quinlan. He also does well into Han, right? Because you get those positive trade ups.
Especially on the initiative.
Yeah. But Anakin struggles right into some of this space aggro, right? So I think Anakin. Well, you know what? Anakin probably is good into. I'm not looking at the data, but Anakin's probably good into the Boba pilot because you got all the restore on ground. You have some of the same sort of strategies that you have like with Han to be able to combat that. Historically, I think where Anakin has struggled has been into some of the blue-green villain, though. So, like the Kira, the Iden, probably Kylo Data Vault. That's where you're going to run into some trouble.
Yeah, we're seeing Gar, Sabine. It's been about a toss-up. And this is for Anakin Blue. But I do want, Sharkey, you ran Kit this weekend, obviously, and you were since talking about some changes that you made to better fight those space decks. I think that green hero is pretty equipped to do that. And
I was about to mention that, yeah.
That leads me to wonder. I wonder if we're playing the wrong Anakin color.
Anakin green has been floating around in a few places that I've seen that is just kind of crazy. I've seen a Data Vault build actually by Grumpy Elephant that was awesome. It's one of those, like, I don't even remember exactly how it happened, but I remember I was playing Cad Bane with it at the time, and I saw like I bazined his hand and he had 3 General's Blades and something else, and I was like, all right, I'll get rid of one of them, and now he's going to flip Anakin and put 2 of them on him, and it's like, all right, what do you do? And the ability to trade up like that is a very good trade of Anakin's. The thing that Anakin that I have seen struggle with, and I've tried playing Anakin myself, and some of this is also probably the pilot being just kind of with him, but how often do you want to try to win the initiative is really the question when it comes down to the Anakin game prior to focusing on him forever and getting a million reps in. And I think that's what's keeping his numbers down, but I still think he's a very strong leader, especially in the right hands.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not even seeing any Anakin green data at all on Swoobase. So I'm sure it's there, but it's probably just not enough to list. Yeah.
An interesting one to look at, looking at the top 8 percentage, right? That one that pops out to me anyway is
from this
Yoda,
past week or total?
From this past week. So we're just talking about, hey, well, what's that blue-red leader, right? You kind of shifted to Anakin there.
Yeah.
Yoda. There were 7 Yodas that got top 8 placements and a winner, and it actually works out to be what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 7th or 8th most represented deck. I mean, it's kind of right there. It's almost with Sabine. It's not my style. I haven't played a lot of Yoda, but it's definitely something worth looking into based on the results, right? So if we're postulating that, maybe there is a different blue-red hero angle that would help kind of fill some of the gaps where Han might be struggling, maybe it's Yoda, right? Yeah. Just at least looking at the data.
Well, I think the Yoda deck's cool. I think it goes pretty big. It draws a lot of cards. It heals. Those are all positive things. I was thinking, though, just from the green perspective, with how many great ships there are, right? Blue Leader, Bright Hope, Home One, Phoenix Squadron A-Wing. Like we mentioned, our teammate Jeremiah won on Han Green this past Saturday, and he was running quite a few space units. The Rebellious Hammerhead, the Bright Hope, Home One, Blue Leader, and Red 5. Right, like that's a pretty hefty space package for a Han deck. But I think you probably do want to have a mix of that plus your force throws, your lightnings of the world, whatever you're playing. Right, I think that's one great part about Han Blue as well, is that you could play half of those space units, but then you get force lightning most of the time, at least.
Yeah, that's fair. I think there's a lot of interesting things, and there's a lot of things that we're gonna have to go to the not drawing board, but go to the brainstorm room, right, and just start figuring out some of these things, because it's not I wouldn't call this a solved meta by any chance, and I think there's a lot of ways to go attack it, and I think that's really fun in my opinion.
Sure.
So,
Kyle, what's your prediction?
Yeah, I think you made my prediction of what's going to happen meta wise.
Yeah, make a call for the people.
I think we're going to kind of stay flat for a week or two. I think we're starting to settle. Like we've been talking about, is the wheel going to continue to rotate as it has the last 4 weeks? I guess my prediction would be no. I think we're going to see some flattening here for a couple of weeks. I think we've gotten enough data that we're starting to see the meta settle a little bit. Mm-hmm. Now, this is PQ meta, right? You always have to say that, at any PQ, you're going to run into the locals who want to play what they want to play, right? This isn't a sector. This isn't an RQ. I think once you get to day 2 of larger events, you could pretty well predict kind of meta share, that sort of thing. You could show up to a PQ at a state that you haven't been to, or even within a state, but on a different end of that state, and see all kinds of weirdness. So I think your top table meta, though, what you're going to see here, I think we are starting to settle, and you're going to see kind of the percentages even out.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a Trench Blue, I think top 4 in awesome. In Norway or Switzerland. Forgive me if I'm mixing up the flags, but well, you can check that out later.
Well, even on your page right there, you have the unusual PQ champions. You saw it. Akbar won one, right? Yeah. It's probably somebody who's just really good at Akbar who lives in that area, wanted to play the deck and got it done, right?
So your prediction for next week is that Boba and Quinn will remain for the 3rd week in a row the most winningest, most successful.
I think so. I think we're starting to see kind of things settle a little bit, and I expect to see more of the same. It'll take a little bit for people to figure out or decide to switch off, right? People have invested time. I know myself. Sure. I've been playing a lot of Han Blue into the decks I know, the decks I want to play. If I want to make a real shift, I need to put the time and energy into that, and I want to make sure I make a good choice based on what people are playing.
Mm-hmm. Sure, Sharkey.
I expect there to actually be a bit more of a shift than Kyle does, but not so much of a shift as we've seen from Galactics to now. So I do think there will be at least a leveling. Mm-hmm. I don't know that Quinlan and Boba will win multiple PQs in next week or the week after. I think it'll probably still win one each. But I do think that there's going to start to be at least the rumblings of something that comes out that attacks those two very well. I know that there's a PQ down in Boston territory coming up soon, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if they cook something up crazy that takes those two out. I know there's a few more that are working the week after that, which is the same one that we have our second one. I wouldn't be shocked to see something come out by then that attacks both those two, at least in a manner that brings one of them back to back to level with the playing field.
So what is it?
Oh, I have no idea. At this point, if I knew that, I'd be running it.
Okay, no fun.
I'm sticking with Kit right now because I actually think Kit Green is pretty good into both. I honestly would have been happy to find a Quinlan matchup on Saturday. All of the testing was very Kit-sided on that matchup, and is the reason I didn't run Von Reg, because Von Reg was very bad into Quinn. And I think I beat Quinn as bad with Kit as Quinn beat Von Reg in all of our testing, probably 20 odd games this week, just trying to see what worked. And I think that Red Green Hero can do well into both of those. They're a little less good into Boba, but the daughter kind of changes that math pretty quick too. So I wouldn't be shocked if it was a Red Green Hero of some kind. I know Kit is a little on the fringe and something I would run, but like a Han Green taking down another PQ or a couple of them like Maya did wouldn't shock me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, one of the advantages of running a deck like Kit is that most people haven't played against it very much, right? Mm-hmm. So you're still figuring out stuff about the deck, and that means your opponent definitely is too.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So kind of quick one this week. Any further topics you guys want to dive into?
Yeah, I mean, anything you're leaning on towards? Jordan, you and I are going to be here, in 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. Anything you're kind of leaning towards yet?
Like I mentioned, I'm probably going to chill on Towson for a bit. I think I have enough reps with her that if she becomes well positioned, I'll feel confident in picking her up. Think I've been playing that Han Green build a little bit. It's surprisingly good into the space aggro stuff, but it can struggle into the ground aggro stuff. Like I played a couple sets with one of my buddies who's a good Sabine player, and that was, wasn't so good. Where with the blue one is much better. Like always, I've been messing with Kaz a little bit more too. Kaz is not good into the Kaz blue that I play is not good into Boba Data Vault, but it is really good into Quinn because of all the shields. I think Quinn handles the low HP space units a lot better than the mid to high HP space units a lot, especially when you could add a shield on top of that. And then, yeah, I've just been kind of having an open mind about what could be possible in terms of like what that, because I think it's a space deck. I don't know what it is, but I think it's a space deck that's going to be faster, more efficient, quicker. It's probably not Piet, but I think there's going to be a battle for that kind of like space supremacy, whether it's Luke Data Vault making a little bit of a comeback, but it does seem like Boba Data Vault kind of outclasses Luke a little bit. So that's something I've been thinking about over the past day or two. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I want to see if I can get my sideboard right, or at least get my main deck tuned to have a better matchup into Quinlan. I'm struggling a little bit there. I like Han into all the other stuff. Well, except for Iden. I don't know if that one can be figured out. I hope that deck is just getting beaten up by all these aggro decks, right? My main goal is just consistency, right? I want to just keep consistently performing as best I can, and then I think trying to play a deck that I'm comfortable with is probably going to be the way to go. I'm pretty proficient with Quinlan. I could always do it. I just I like kind of sticking with Han. It was weird at our PQ. I was kind of off meta playing Han. We were laughing about it, but there was only three Hans. And the conversion rate was great because Maya won it with Han Green. I top 8'd with Han Blue, and so despite there only being a couple of us, three of us, right? 2 out of 3 of us made the top 8. So obviously the deck still performed. So.
Yeah, obviously like 2 different decks, blue, green. I think there was only 3 Talzins, which was surprising.
Yeah,
just how much
it was a pretty surprising spread, honestly.
And it was a pretty big field. I think what was it, 72 or was it 68?
I think we were just under 70.
Yeah, let me check it out.
Well, the top of it was pretty normal though, right? We saw the most Quinlan, Boba Data Vault, and Han Pilot.
But that's 1, 2, weird 3. For Colorado.
Yeah.
So like at least it's been weird for the previous iterations of the Colorado meta, right? Like that's it being normal is a little weird. Luckily I have a whole month because I don't get to play in our next Colorado PQ. I get to go out to Utah next month for that one. Yeah,
I'm a little bit hesitant on how like well attended that one will be. It's Labor Day. And
the Colorado one,
and for those outside of Colorado, a lot of people out here like to go outside. They like to go do stuff in the mountains and go to a meadow or two. So
I'll be out of town.
No, it's just a pretty people always joke that like if you're going to the mountains or Vail or something for Memorial Day or Labor Day, you should leave a couple days early because it's just like a New York City level traffic trying to get there. And I think we'll see. I'm hopeful. We had a great crowd, great people, no incidents, great judging, great prizes too. I think Mythic did a great job. They had a lot of door prize. I think basically everybody that attended got a door prize, which is always a good experience to have. And I think overall some lessons learned. I think for me my main takeaway is that I tried to adjust for the meta in the wrong way, and that's something that I need to learn as I weigh other factors like that sunk time on one deck or the other or whatever it might be. But all things to think about, again, while we're being really honest with ourselves. Okay, so a little bit going on the channel this week. We have midday matchup coming up on Friday. We have been doing a lot of stuff past couple weeks. We were on Late Night's channel if you wanted to check that out. We got a lot of good stuff coming for you in the future as well. Maybe more streams once one of us qualifies. Once we hit that 100-point threshold, we'll have to draw straws. And it's not me this time because I sat out the last time. So all right, good stuff.
I'll take it. I'm halfway there.
Any final notes for the people as we close stuff out on a Sunday night?
Just another shout out to the Mythic judging crew, Steve and Andres, and I feel really bad I don't remember the third judge, but they are awesome and we appreciate what they do.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll give a shout out to the team, right? There's some other teams starting to form here in the Colorado area, and so got to make sure we let them know.
Yeah.
Three CCCs in the top 8 and the victory. So
same honorary Jeff Creasy is an honorary CCC.
No,
so
he's not.
No, he's not.
He's a bot with us. Yeah, you can hang out.
We love Jeff, but he's a dirty Bothan.
Yeah. But it's always great to leave an event positively, right? We were talking about it yesterday. Like when you go to the crown jewel, the main event, whatever, you should only leave with one emotion, and that's I had a good time, right? And that's what we try to do, especially after losing. You try to remind yourself, I'm here to have a good time. I'm here to have a good time. So I hope you guys had a good time hanging out with us during this little learning lessons, recap session, whatever we want to call it. We got a lot coming up for you. Hope you stay tuned, like and subscribe. I know Kyle's been asking me to say that more often. I don't like to. Do it if you want. I don't care. All right, for Kyle and Sharkey, we'll catch you soon. Talk to you later. Bye.